Welcome to NovoEDTalks, a podcast for authentic, honest conversations about talent development and the people shaping it. On this show, we sit down with leaders across learning and development, mentorship, leadership development, HR, and people strategy to talk about what's really working, what's changing, and what they're learning along the way. These aren't surface-level interviews. They're candid conversations about building skills, developing leaders, supporting managers, and creating experiences that actually move organizations forward. Before we jump in, a quick word about NovoED. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoED is a people-centric talent development platform built for enterprises and training providers. Business transformation starts with people, and people perform better on NovoED. In today's fast-changing landscape, upskilling requires a new approach. NovoED makes it easy to move beyond the talent development status quo by combing social, collaborative, cohort-based learning with real-world application. The result is future-ready talent built on a platform designed to turn learning into measurable impact. Now, let's meet our guests for today's NovoEDTalks episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for talent development trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk, and I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast. And today I am joined by Becca Hammer, who is the owner of Hammer Enablement Solutions. Becca has been loving everything about sales and sellers since her first sales job, knocking on doors of small businesses selling advertising for her local newspaper. She has held roles in sales from transactional to enterprise, has been in sales management. She transitioned into sales training and enablement because she loved helping sellers and supporting their development. She has been the owner of Hammer Enablement Solutions since 2012 and has worked with sellers, managers, and senior leaders all over the globe. Becca lives in Colorado, where she e-bikes, skis, camps, and hikes with her husband and kids. Becca, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Welcome.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to hear all of it. You've got so much great experience in this field. We're so excited to have you here and just dive right in. So let's get to it. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself, your consulting firm, and kind of the scope of, the core maybe sales enablement challenges that you're focused on?
Yeah, so I started in sales enablement and originally it was just training because when I first started into this, there was no such thing as enablement, right? It was train them up, do the training, and check the box. And maybe there was a little bit of training onboarding. But as we all know, that's evolved to become the enablement function that it is today. And really loving that because what it means is that we've been able to expand our scope into working cross-functionally, helping people really connect across organizations. But we haven't left the training piece behind. So that really resonates with me. And it's one of the things that I appreciate doing. I work across the board. I've done a ton of media work, but also a lot of SaaS companies. I'm finishing an engagement right now with an energy as a service company. So that's been a fun education. But what I've learned is across the board, and I focus, even though I do leadership training and onboarding organizationally, I focus a lot on sellers. And one of the things that I've found is that regardless of the industry, so many of the issues remain the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we find out on this podcast a lot, which a lot of the themes that come out of it can be, transitioned across industries. And we'll get folks on that are like, oh, hey, totally different industry, but I love what they said about X, Y, and Z, and we face those same challenges. Speaking of challenges, why don't you talk about maybe some of the most kind of common pressures or challenges that you run into in the teams that you work with and how, what's most present for them right now?
Right now, and it's no surprise and I've listened to your podcast, and so much of it focuses on AI. And I think what happens is that people are trying to understand where they fit into the role, right? What should AI mean to me? What does it mean to me? How much of my work can I offload, for a better term, to AI? Should I be using it? And believe it or not, though, I've talked to a number of people who their companies don't allow AI. It is mind-boggling. Yes. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And they're like, no, we don't have AI here at all. And so you run the gamut, right? From those to folks who are like, we don't have SDRs anymore, we have AI. Um, it is, and people again, but the people that I work with, mostly sellers and sales leadership, are just trying to figure out how can I leverage it? How can I learn from it? How can it assist me to get better, smarter, faster, build pipeline, and close more deals?
Interesting. Yeah, I bet. That's especially in sales, I can see that being the case where people, are maybe are going either or way, which is crazy that you see, kind of the two extremes of that. If you think about kind of what the ideal state is for an organization with their sales enablement training programs, what does that look like in practice?
Oh my gosh, my ideal, and I've seen it close in in an organization or two. But what it is that constant development and learning matters. It's prioritized from the very top of the organization and it flows all the way through it. And the way that that shows in real life in the day to day is that there is time set aside in every weekly meeting to learn something. Whether it's a call dissection, a call review, we learn a new skill, we practice objections, we practice and we try to get better all the time. And the organization supports that.
Absolutely, and that last piece you said is the big thing, like, the organization supports that because I think it's like this yin and yang, right, of where, hey, you have to be able to want to do this and, like, take this on and have almost this culture of, like, I wanna continuously learn, but it also has to come from the top down in that they provide the spaces, most importantly, the time, and the way to do that and to practice, like you said. That's a big thing that we're focused on right now.
What I find is that executive leaders also understand that they continually have to learn too, right? In organizations that don't have that function, the top of the organization kind of feels like, yeah, I know this. I've been there. I've done this. I don't need. It's for like learning is for them, not for me. In those organizations, you're not going to see that top down commitment to development.
Yeah, and that's too bad, really. Where do you think that there's, the biggest gap between, and obviously, I'm sure it's different in organizations, but if you could kind of like, high level, where is the biggest blocker between getting to kind of that ideal state and where we are now?
I think, and it's an excuse, but it's the excuse that gets in the way. It's time. It's always it's not. They say it's a priority, but it's not because if you prioritize something, you make time for it. And what happens is that the organization prioritizes something else instead. Our new initiative, our new product launch, our new whatever. And what happens is that something there's an opportunity cost. Something's got to give. So what's that going to be? Learning and development because we don't have time for that right now.
Right. No, it happens all the time. And I think sometimes, we talk about the challenges here on this podcast, but, and everyone always kind of touches on it, like time being the big, but I think that's like a universal thing for every organization right now, especially as we're competing with like, you got to do more, you got to do more, you got to do more. And
But let's go back to that though. So here's the thing is that isn't AI supposed to be the thing that saves us all this time? Doesn't AI make us more efficient? Doesn't isn't that what isn't that the reason that we say we're bringing it in? It's going to save us time. It's going to lessen the reports that we have to do. It's going to lessen the research that we have to do. Shouldn't that be freeing up time? Yeah. So why not, build that back into development?
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that. And we're going to get into that when we talk about AI in a little bit. But let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to it. Absolutely. um, How talk to me a little bit about how you design or how you think about or coach, you know, clients to design these kind of like sales enablement and training experiences to make sure that they actually like stick and that it's not just sitting in front of a computer screen and then going and saying, "Yep, good. Go and do it."
Yeah, so the first thing is always working with the frontline leadership, and confirming through questioning that the thing they think they need is actually what they need. I'll give you a good example. Somebody will be a sales leader will come to me. I need some training. We need help closing, or we're not very good negotiators, so we need help there. I'm like, Are you sure? Right? And then I'll start asking them questions on like what they need at. And then so once we get to what the actual issue is, then I'll say, well, what would good look like? How will you know? And I don't decide what the outcome's going to be. I have them decide what the outcome's going to be. So they'll be able to do X, Y, and Z, and our numbers will look like this and this. And so then we'll talk about that. Well, why do you think that number is going to be impacted by being able to do this? Right? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to be held responsible for the outcome of the motion that we go through in partnership with the sales leader. But if they don't have a part in it, do they really have much skin in the game? No. So I start by doing that. The next thing we do is, and this has been a lesson that I learned over time, experientially, right? Is that anything that I present has to be tied to a real world effort, a real world customer, a real world situation. There is just there was just no space for theoretical when it comes to the development that I do.
I love that, and I was actually just gonna make a note of that quote because I think that that's so just, like, tying things, you know, to actual outcomes, I think is so important, and obviously, as a consultant, that's important for you to show that your work is successful, but I think it's important for any organization to do that when thinking about any initiative because I do think we get into this habit of, "Let's just throw a training at it," right? Where it's like, "Let's just do this." That's a theme that's come up a lot recently that I've been talking to a lot of leaders about, and we all kinda, like, chuckle about it, but the reality is that's still done, like, very frequently at organizations, and it
So frequently. It's painful, and here's the thing is, one of my goals is to wanna have participants attend and participate in training, and in order to do that, it has to be contextually relevant, it has to mean something to them, and they have to be able to use it. These are adult learners right here, and if you don't give me something that I can immediately take out into the real world, start applying, and see if it works, then, chances are I'm just gonna be like, "Thanks, you were really funny." Yeah. Not the outcome I mean, that's nice, but it's not the outcome I'm looking for.
Absolutely. As you're like, creating these, obviously, you're trying to tie them to outcomes and things like that, but what are some signals, like, during the trainings or these programs or courses that you're running that show you that learners are truly engaged and that they're applying what they're learning?
Okay, I learned this really early in my career, and it's the strangest things, but it's I found it to be a truism, is that when they start making fun of it, they're in. Like, like, if we have let's say that there's a phrase that we use or there's a process that we use or a methodology that we use, when people start bringing it into the lexicon and they start laughing about it or making fun of it, I know I got it.
That's interesting. I like that, though. Yeah.
It's this and I used to get offended because I'm like, "Oh, they're making fun of my stuff." And then I realized, you know what though? No, when they actually are starting to internalize it, that's when they start referencing it. That's when they start alluding to it. That's when they start making fun of it. And I'm like, "Okay, okay." If they never talk about it, I've lost.
Yeah, because it's just in and out. Yeah. No, I love that as a marker. This I question has actually got me some of the best answers in that I think it really taps into like human psychology almost where it's just like because people will say things like, "Oh, people are excited about it," or you're saying they're joking about it, or people have said when they're having fun, when I can see that they're having fun and laughing, it's fine. So, like, I love all of those answers because it's not what I expect to get as an answer to that question, but it's like, oh yeah, when people are like just being human about it, for lack of a better word.
Right, isn't I mean, behavior change is gonna impact the ability for I gotta be change the behavior before I can change the outcomes, right? And behavior change, that's what it's all loaded up with. It's all that psychology that you just referred to. It's all about making fun and starting to talk the talk, and that's when I know. Otherwise, again, I hope, I wish, I pray that it worked, but when they start joking about it, I know I'm in.
I love that. That's awesome. Becca, there's been a shift from, soft skills, so to say, to what people are calling durable or power skills. Things like judgment, discernment, decision making, adaptability, a big one. How do you think about, skills development for sales teams in this moment, especially as AI is accelerating change?
This is the place where I don't, I'm not focused on the individual contributors. This is all the leadership opportunity. And I can't even count the number of times that I've run my change management course. Um, we don't talk about I mean, we talk about it up here. Yeah, we need you to listen change management, but we don't talk about the nuts and bolts of it and how hard it is and how much repetition is required to do effective change management. And so I work very closely with leaders to say, how are we going to employ this change and that adaptability? How are you going to position this so that your team doesn't dig their heels in and this new initiative that the company is requiring is successful? It just, and they don't want, it's funny. People don't want to talk about, well, you're just going to train them up. No, no. What are you going to do? And then how are you going to reinforce it? Because on the day to day, the training department is not sitting there at their desk. I don't get to meet with them on one-on-ones. I don't get to be in their weekly meetings, but the sales leader does. That manager level is the one who really needs to, you know, reinforce what they want to have happen. And I'm happy to partner with them to think about, well, what kind of activity could you do that helps somebody enhance their way they think about it, or their decision making or their judgment, right? Is it putting scenarios out and then having a conversation with the team about what's the right answer and why or why not, right? I mean, because again, that's the work of leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's super important. And it has to be, like you said, it has to come top down too, like where it helps to create that culture, right? Of like actually wanting change for these things. How do you suggest, obviously there's a lot of skills that need to go into sales. Just basic skill sets that need to be learned. How do you kind of balance, you talked about, and maybe this is your answer to this, but is it like working with, how do you balance, building these human type capabilities, durable skills, if you will, with like the technical sales skills that these folks need? And you talked about, is it a different approach to the different groups that you're working with, or talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I'll give a great example. One of the things that I found really powerful about like something that AI can do is to find out things about the customer that you wouldn't find out through a standard search, right? Uh, a, a- an AI agent can go through and look at a company's reports. They can look at a lot of information. They can see what the CEO's been saying, and they can consolidate all that for you. And as a seller, what you can then do is take that information and develop a pitch or a hook or the opening of your next call or whatever it's going to be. This is where the intelligence meets the human, because the computer, like AI, can give me a report and they can tell me what I should say, but at the end of the day, I have to host that conversation. I have to be the one to position the information correctly, because is it always correct? Not necessarily. And and so how do I, as an individual, take that information, position it with a certain amount of confidence and a certain amount of humility, which is what, the IR will never be able to provide. Those are the kind of skills that we work with and have reps practice doing. That's how you build those skills. Again, it always has to be transferable. It always has to be actionable and immediate, and available for immediate employment.
Absolutely. Becca, you've mentioned practice a couple of times. Could you talk about what you think are some of like the best ways to create, safe environments for people to practice it?
Yes, and I'm such an advocate. I tell people all the time. I say, and I'm going to back up just a little bit before I answer that, because I tell people, I say, what do professional athletes, professional musicians have in common? They make a lot of money. Yes, and what else? They practice. And we eventually get to they practice. And then we talk about how many hours a day a professional musician practices. How many free throws does a basketball player shoot every day? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And they've been doing it since they were little kids, but they still practice, right? So the first thing you have to do is lower the barrier to the concept of practice, because people think it's people who don't know what they're doing have to practice. And that is just, it's the farthest thing from the truth, in my opinion. You have to continually practice. So the first thing is lower the barrier and make practicing expected and making mistakes acceptable, right? I typically ask, and then fostering that, I try to get folks to be in very small groups of like their team, right? A small group of people that I trust because we're all kind of doing the same thing. That's a great environment to practice. And then get somebody who's there's always one in the group that loves to practice. And so you start with them, right? And then they demonstrate it and everybody else sees, okay, they weren't perfect, but they got up there and did it. And then that starts the ball rolling. And then you get the next person, the next person, the next person. And then here's where the magic happens. It doesn't happen once. It's not an event. It's not an event. You have to keep practicing. The musician doesn't go like, I got that piece. I'll never play it. I'll never practice again. No, the game keeps changing. You got to keep practicing.
Absolutely. I love that. That athlete analogy there is one of my favorite things, because not just for practicing, but also for coaches, right? Like, they don't go out there and I actually I'm from New England, and I saw this great interview with Tom Brady asking him about Bill Belichick, because there was a lot of rumors around there, or when he left the New England Patriots, it was like very devastating, obviously. But he talks about Bill Belichick as how he's still one of like the greatest coaches, and got pulled like his talent out of him. Obviously, yes, he practiced a lot too, but having a coach was so important, an important part of that. And I think and they pushed each other, and I think that's something too, we talk about that a lot here at NovoEd, is practice and coaching, mentorship, things like that, because I think, perfect example, the athlete analogy and the musician analogy, where it's like, hey, the best of the best still have coaches, still practice all of the time. So why are we expecting our team to not have those things and still be able to perform at the top level, right?
Exactly. And I'll stay there for a second too. If we're gonna talk about football, I mean, the Patriots. I'm a Kansas City fan. But think about Andy Reid. Think about what Andy Reid has done. Think about what any amazing Hall of Fame coach has done, whether it's Premier League, Pep Guardiola or Andy Reid or Belichick and his sleeveless beard. Okay, but you're right. What they've done, they have been able to find the best in their talent and say, because it's not about taking their worst and making it better. It's finding the best thing that they do and accelerating that, because 10% improvement there from a coaching perspective is going to give you yields that are so much better than trying to take their weaknesses and bring them up to par.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I just love that. I love that you brought that up. Switching gears a little bit, Becca, talking about metrics a little bit, we talked about, what signals let you know that, learners are actually engaged. But, after programs are done, what metrics do you suggest, leaders or teams or C-suite folks look for to see that, the sales enablement training has, you know, proven to be successful?
Yep. Again, the first thing is that I make sure that they are always part of what the metrics are. So I don't have to inform them. They wrote them, right? We wrote them in conjunction. And so they should know what they are. But one of the things too is that I am a firm believer in that, the building block idea of development. So I want to build a strong foundation for you so that when we move to 2.0 version, you're not struggling because you don't know the basics. So, can they, let me back up. One of the ways you can do that is when they move to the 2.0 version or the 3.0 version, the more advanced concepts, they don't struggle because they have a good foundation. And that's really hard. That's very difficult to count, to report on. But I think it's critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd like that, it's different for every organization, and you're working with them to create them. Again, we talked about this, like, yes, you as a consultant, but I think that's important for like teams to do as well without that piece there. Talking about AI, of course, because we can't skip this section. Yeah. And I want to get back to some of the things that you were talking about earlier that I said we'd put a pin in. When you're, training sales teams or sales leadership folks, What how do you suggest those folks use AI as part of their, development strategies?
Yeah. I think about AI as an assistant. And so, if you don't already know how, let's talk about how to make you more manage your time better. Let's talk about have it help you if you had an assistant. Like that's every salesperson's fantasy. Like I've got a sales assistant. Great, you do now. And so what would that assistant do? Well, they would tell me what my day was going to look like. They'd tell me where priorities were. They would flag important things for me to do. They would fill out forms for me. They would be able to do paperwork when necessary and help me manage my schedule. Right? Isn't that what an assistant would do? Great. You just have an assistant. And so I've here's the rub is that sometimes people get those things and they're still like, "Oh, I wanted to do more." And it's like, don't abdicate your job to uh, the AI because you don't want the company getting the idea that you're dispensable.
Right. And there's still so many things that like they need to be able to do and like there's a reason people have assistants and still have their jobs, right? So it's like think of it that way. I think that's another good like kind of analogy for, how we should be thinking about AI and sales folks in particular. Let's get back into though kind of the trade-off between like efficiency and quality and like how do folks kind of navigate, you know, when to use the AI assistant, or when they need to like what are some things that you would recommend that they use AI for and not use AI for?
Yeah, again, my new mantra is there's a big difference between efficient and effective. The AI is efficient. Is it necessarily effective? No, right? And so obviously whenever you're using AI, you have to be it can only be a recommendation. It can only be a support. You are the one at the end of the day who owns what happens with the information, how you use the information. I never pass it along blindly. I always read through it. AI hallucinates. So so make sure that you are doing your due diligence. And does the story make sense that it's giving out? Has it fought? Do you want to use that information knowing what you personally know about the customer? Be careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Speaking of being careful, are there guardrails or design principles you encourage teams to put up that might be different for everyone? But is there any like basics you say, hey, think about this as you're doing this?
I mean, besides, what I hate to, quote Reagan, but it was trust but verify. That's I use that because it makes sense, right? I trust what it says. It pulls data from my own internal databases if I'm using an internal agent, so it should be right. But you know what? It also pulls out of date stuff. It also pulls stuff that you don't provide anymore. It also pulls old pricing. So trust but verify.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's yeah, a very good principle for everyone everywhere using AI at any given.
I'm finding it really challenging though, because, some people are really over indexing on it. They are using it to do their job. And I think that's a really dangerous proposition. Because at some point you're gonna have to get in front of that customer. And if you've been having AI feed them everything, when you have to have a real conversation, you're not gonna be there. And they're gonna be like, remember what that thing you said about this? And you'll be like, and then you're BSing your way through it.
Yeah, and people know that, like we pick up on that like so quickly. Like if you're trying to sell someone something or whatever. So obviously I'm sure you're an expert at, at picking things up like that. But I think most people are, most we're inundated with sales messages all day, every day. And if you can't, we still need like a level of like in order for us, I think, to like accept the sales messages, we need to have like a level of genuine, authentic, like connection there. So I think like you still have to like create that, and if I don't know if AI can do that all of the time, right? At least not without a lot of input.
Right. And I mean, and here's the thing too, is that, the AI slop is so out of hand and I don't see it ending anytime soon. So you got AI slop, and then you've also got, and then you're like, well, you really want to be that helpful person and stuff. And then as well as I do that some of those AI, you know, if you don't tell it otherwise, it's sycophantic. It's like you're the prettiest girl I've ever seen, and you're amazing and wonderful and smart. And it's like, what are you doing? That's not a business relationship. You're just, flattering now. It's weird.
Yeah, we come back, well, obviously, this podcast is all about it, but being authentic and, like, real. Like, I think that's such a simple thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, no." It's like, well, think about it in, like, literally everything you do in your day-to-day role. Are you being authentic, and are you being real, and how can you ca bring that element to it, right? And I think that in an age of AI.
So let me just, I'll draw the bridge. I don't know if you're already going to just move to this, but this is one of those things where that learning culture that I talked about, where we practice and you get coached and you have real people doing real things. That's going to be the guardrail that you've got against people just AIing their jobs out. It's going to be when you're sitting there in your group when you have to handle an objection and you haven't really handled any objections, but the AI has, you're going to be exposed. So but if you don't have that, because I have been seeing some sellers who are just off the rails with it. I mean, they're just, like, this is the best thing ever. I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing anything. Being a prompt master is not the same as selling.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good quote. We gotta pull that. Being a prompt master is not the same as selling. That might be the title of this episode. Stay tuned. Uh, Becca, as you think about, what's coming and like thinking about the past, what do you believe sales leaders, since we touched on them, need to unlearn and what do they need to double down on?
I think they need to unlearn and if they haven't already, it's been a ask of mine that they stop believing that behavior change it can be done in a magic hour of training. That they don't have a role in it. They really need to unlearn that development and training lives with the enablement team, or just a conduit. You have to do the work, right? And so I wish they'd unlearn that.
Yep, that's a good one.
And then what was part B?
And part B is what do they need to double down on?
Again, it's strangely enough in this day of technology, they need to double down on the personal touch. They need to use the AI to get things off their plate that keep them from being in contact with their team, with their individual contributors. They need to get they join sales calls, touch base more often, have more team meetings, be in person if possible. They need to be more present.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this might be a very like hopeful and maybe too hopeful message, but I really think in this age of rapid AI and technology advancement, I think that there's an opportunity for us as a civilization, if we do it right, for us to actually come more together and use AI for efficiency and use that extra time that we have to connect more meaningful and deeper with one another. And that's like my hope for what's happening. We'll see if that happens or not. But
I echo that, Melissa. I would love that. I would love it if we could use it for that purpose and free ourselves. But I don't know. I think we're gonna stumble and we're gonna struggle mightily for the next 18 months or so until we try to start figuring it out. Because right now we're just wild, wild west.
yeah, it it so is. We had an amazing guest on recently who we talked a lot about AI and really like in a very deep, meaningful way and what it means and kind of took a step back and asked some questions about that. But when we asked him what he'd like his background to be, he'd be like, I don't know, some kind of wild, wild west thief. I was like, I love that. It does. It aligns with the conversation we had had. Anyway, Becca, to close, what's one lesson that you've learned on your journey in sales, as immense and great as it has been, that you wish you had known earlier on in your career?
Um, so when I moved into enablement, I was just ready to help everybody and save the sales world, and but the thing that I wish I had known then that I know now, and I repeat this a lot to enthusiastic enablement people, is I can't want it more than you.
That's a really good one. I think for leaders anywhere, it's like you can't do it for them. Like they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No.
I can be passionate about it. I can be excited about it. I can build the best program. I can do all the things. I need you to want this. I need you to commit to this. And together we can do it. But
Yeah. No, absolutely. I feel like that's a good rule of thumb for life and people and the relationships with people in your life in general. It's like you can want them to do something, but they've got to want it more than you do. Anyway, Becca, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the NovoEd Talks podcast today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and our time here. Thank you so much for joining us.
thank you. Take care.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NovoEd Talks.